I'm Kim Edelston with FamilyBusiness.org, and today I'm with Professor Peter Jaskiewicz, who's the University Research Chair in Enduring Entrepreneurship and also the Academic Director of the Family Enterprise Legacy Institute at the University of Ottawa. Thank you for being with me today, Peter.
Thanks for having me, Kim. It's a pleasure.
And today we're going to talk about his book that was co-authored with Sabine Rao, called Enabling the Next Generation Legacies, a fantastic book. I highly recommend to family business owners and stakeholders. So let's start at the beginning. How did you get the idea for this book?
Well, we worked with over 100 families globally and interviewed the senior generation and the next generation, it's usually kids between the ages of 18 and 40, and realized the next generation is asking very different questions from their parents. And a lot of people are not really listening to them or answering them. So we asked them, how would you like to get these questions answered? Collected their most pressing questions and put 35 of them into this book. To provide you some examples, they have pressing questions. For instance, how to start the discussion about succession when you have parents in their 70s and they haven't raised it. My feeling is that many of them actually have already good ideas on how to answer them, but they have the feeling there's no real dialogue happening, and that is worrisome.
I found that the most interesting part of your book too, the fact that in asking these different questions, you got feedback from both family business leaders and owners, the practitioners, if you will, as well as the academics doing the research who can offer some insight. So you gave that question about succession. What did the academics and the practitioners have to say?
Well, it's a very delicate topic to raise it, and it can lead to a lot of family friction. So, I mean, it's also recognizing and respecting the older generation that very often built the organization, is busy running it, and might simply not have had the time, or maybe also the will to think about when it is time for them to step down, or maybe they're afraid actually that the next generation won't want to succeed. At the same time, when we listen to the next generation, their point is that they have a lot of options. It's different than one generation ago, where a lot of people just had one option, is come to the family business or start the family business. Now the next generation has options, whether they want to work for, I don't know, Apple in San Francisco or move to Paris. It doesn't have to be the family business. And I believe you need two to tango if you want that family business to be sustained for another generation.
Oh, you're getting at a really good point. So that really the importance of communicating, or you might lose, right? You might lose that next generation if they build their careers elsewhere and don't feel that, succession is going to happen. What other questions did you find really interesting?
So we see a lot of next generation members have asked whether they actually deserve the ownership or wealth they will be inheriting. And many of them have this problem that they are growing up with tremendous wealth, but it doesn't mean that they have a clear identity or know exactly who they are or what they want to do. And if these questions aren't answered, right, if they only see the wealth they're inheriting maybe as an entitlement or as something, of tremendous benefit, but not also as a duty and maybe as an idea of stewardship, and they don't see a purpose in it, bad things can happen. So we've seen many examples of next generation members in general, not in the book, squandering the wealth or making poor decisions. So it would be helpful here to start a dialogue as early as possible, and if needed, involve other people, because among family members and across generations, such discussions can be quite emotional and also go in the wrong direction sometimes, as we have learned and seen.
So it's interesting you mentioned this. Just this week with my next generation class, we talked about wealth, and I used the example of someone we knew well died unexpectedly at 56, and he kind of protected his wife and his children. His children were young. They didn't even know where the money was. They didn't even know what banks he used. They didn't know what assets he held. So, this importance of these conversations and dialogue, and even knowing who your accountant is, your lawyer, what banks you use. So I love this idea. So you said you had some bad examples. What do you see family businesses doing right when it comes to teaching their children about wealth?
one thing they do bad regarding wealth, for example, I met a family business CEO and they didn't tell the kids about the wealth they're having. And when I asked them how much wealth it is, they said, well, we are not really wealthy. It's just 990 million US dollars. And I said, so what do your kids think? They think we have 5 million or so. I said, how old are your kids? 38, 34, and 32. It might change their life. They are married, they have kids, and they have no idea what will be coming, and it will be a game changer, right? But in this case, they were unwilling to do it because they feel uncomfortable. On a positive note, we have seen families also change course. I mean, I had to deal with a family that's very, very large globally, that is located in Germany, the 15th generation. And they have a policy of not employing family members because they have several hundred family shareholders. But one of their next generation members was very qualified, very passionate about the history of the business, very involved, couldn't work in the business, started working for a competitor to the extent that it hurt the family's business. And they then decided to change course and change the employment policy, realizing that there is such talent in the next generation that they won't hire a few hundred family members, but there is 2 or 3 of them that actually hurt them by working for competing firms and taking on leadership positions in these companies. And they hired these people back and changed the policies.
I love that story. That is fantastic when they make these rules that they don't necessarily always work. When do you suggest families start talking about money and wealth?
So I believe it's important to do so early because there's a lot of stigma there, and that stigma is often passed on because of where people started. Most people started very humble beginnings. And that is a friction that, it's not going away by not talking about it. It will just grow over time. And very often it can lead to resentment and to more separation and division within the family. And I think, if anything, we need to build bridges across generations to enable those next generation legacies, whether it is to let the next generation earn their own money first, to require them to get external work experiences, right? To not get them used to entitlements, but to make them earn it and to enjoy it. It's beautiful when you hike a mountain and have a beautiful view from the top, but it's a pretty boring view if you just take the gondola to the top, right? Because you can take it all the time.
So how can maybe philanthropy be used to teach children about wealth and giving back and being humble?
So to our surprise, many next generation owners actually, or members, don't know so much about it because it has kind of been just running, and it's something that the older generation is deeply familiar with, but it's a routine for them. But if you don't communicate, if you don't share, if you're so busy running everything, and we know that business owners are incredibly busy, they don't think about it. They just believe everyone kind of knows, but they very often don't. They don't know that there's been support for 20 years for maybe a hospital, or there's regular meetings of a board of a foundation, right? And there's regular revision of many proposals in the community. And we see that there is an amazing opportunity to get people also involved in such activities. And it's great if they can contribute. They want to contribute, but somebody has to roll out that red carpet and also teach them.
Oh, I love that. And it sounds like getting them involved in the philanthropy might help build the identity that you said is sometimes missing.
Absolutely. And in many cases, actually, the next generation really knows what is happening right now out there in the world, what will be working for their generation. Because let's face it, the next generation is our future, whether we think they're ready or not, right? One day they will be, and we have to deal with it. And we have to give them the opportunity to grow along the lines. They will make mistakes like everyone does. I always joke, let them get the experiences early and let them make the mistakes working for others with other people's money. So that always helps.
I love that. I love that.
You cannot put them into a cage or force them into a particular straitjacket, because they have so many opportunities, and it's great if they have a possibility to find out what their passions are.
So your book has been out since January, and it's actually on the bestseller list in corporate governance in Amazon. Congratulations.
Thank you.
What's the reaction been so far from the next generation and the business owners?
So our goal was always to do it with the next generation, with the community, and for them. So we have partnered with global non-for-profit organizations, the family business associations around the globe. And we've been very proud that they have adopted it for educational purposes of their members. We want the book to start discussions around the boardroom table, kitchen table, at the cottage, at the conference. And we're glad the next generation is picking it up. They can open the book at any page, at any question, because it is for them and with them. And it's great that they also are part of the book.
So you've worked with so many family businesses around the world. You're a leading academic in family business. I want to know, what was the most surprising thing you learned in putting together this book? Your last words of wisdom. What surprised you?
One size fits all approach very often does not work. So we realized in the book too, that having these conversations is very important, because at the end of the day, you have to do what works for you. And we've seen that for different families, different things work. So it's even more important to actually understand the family. And very often it's a starting point to understand the family, to start asking, who are we as a family? How do we see ourselves in the long term? And what are we willing and able to contribute? And that's not just the now, but across generation. And so building that bridge across generations will also help figure out what to do with the business in the long term, whether it's the active involvement, whether it's, a long prepared sale, and then maybe the start of a family office, or whether it is, the educational programs for responsible owners and stewardship across multiple generations. Who knows?
So I highly recommend your book again, Enabling the Next Generation Legacies. I think it's fantastic for getting families to have some very difficult but important conversations. And your book gives enough guidance from practitioners, from academics, to hopefully get the ball rolling and start these important conversations. So again, I'm Kim Edelston with FamilyBusiness.org with Professor Peter Jaskiewicz. Thank you so much, Peter.
The pleasure was mine, Kim. Thanks so much for having me. And let's hope we can kickstart some dialogues in the community after this interview.